Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you. Welcome back to Now TV and Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And listen, I covered a lot of territory last Friday in tying together, tying together 2 Peter chapter 3 with Isaiah chapter 2 through 5, and then connecting the promise of Isaiah of the day of the Lord, the last days day of the Lord, when the Lord would come to destroy creation. And I demonstrated the absolute incredible connection between Isaiah chapter 2, Jesus' emphatic application of Isaiah 2, 19 and following, to the coming destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. That's found in Luke 23, 28 to 31. Then Paul's citation of the very verses that Jesus applied to AD 70. Paul cited those same verses to predict the impending judgment of the Jews for persecuting the saints. Now you see, Luke chapter 23 is Jesus' prediction of the judgment of Jerusalem for killing him. It's all about the martyrs, all right? Then I've demonstrated to you that this concept of the vindication of the martyrs is found in Matthew chapter 23, 29 and following, in which Jesus said all of the blood of all the righteous would be vindicated and judged in the judgment of Jerusalem in his generation. Now, I've just got to tell you, I do not know how much clearer things could be. But then I demonstrated, here's the chain, here's the linkage, here's the connecting of the dots. Isaiah chapter 2, 2 through 5. Luke 23, 28 to 31. Matthew 23, 29 and following. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, and then Revelation chapter 6. Because you see, as I pointed out last week, and I'll be very, very quick here because I've got a long way to go today. And I realize I'm throwing an awful lot of information out there, okay? If you want an in-depth study of these correlations, go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Go to my store and look up the book, pardon me, The Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat. In that book, I do an in-depth exegetical examination showing the direct connections between Isaiah, Luke 23, Matthew 23, 2 Thessalonians 1, and Revelation. Now listen, folks, you really have to catch the power of this, right? If these connections are valid, solid, and true, then it proves beyond a shadow of the doubt that Peter's prediction of the day of the Lord happened in AD 70. Why is that? Well, because Peter said his prediction of the day of the Lord for the last days to destroy creation was taken from the Old Testament. In Isaiah, we have the prediction of the last days, day of the Lord, for the Lord to destroy creation. And so unless you're able to demonstrate, absolutely demonstrate, that Isaiah is talking about a different last days, or he's talking about a different last days, day of the Lord, a different last days, day of the Lord to destroy creation from what Peter's talking about, well, then guess what? They are the same. And then that means that all of the connections that I've shared with you now, Isaiah 2 through 5, Luke 23, Matthew 23, 2 Thessalonians 1, Revelation 6. It proves that those connections really are valid. It proves that they are solid. It proves that they are accurate. And once again, it proves that the day of the Lord of 2 Peter chapter 3 is not some imaginary end of time, earth-burning, cosmos-destroying event. It proves that it was the day of the Lord in AD 70. Now, I want to drive that home today, and this is why I said, boy, I've got a long way to go this morning. I know I absolutely will not get it all covered. But you know what? That's okay. And let me make this comment. I really, really, really appreciate hearing from so many of you who send me private messages saying, listen, Don, don't worry about finishing up this or finishing up that. Don't cut it short. Go in depth. Keep connecting those dots for us. Keep showing us how the New Testament writers are drawing on, citing, quoting, utilizing the Old Testament prophecies and showing their fulfillment in their day and in their time. So again, I appreciate your input. I appreciate your reactions. All right, now then, I want to drive my point home by looking further at Revelation chapter 6. Now remember, Revelation 6, 12 through 17 is the answer to the prayer of the martyrs in Revelation 6, 9 to 11. Here are the martyrs crying out for vindication. They want the Lord to avenge them. From the Greek word ekdekesis, which is used over and over and over and over again in the New Testament to apply to the Lord's coming. To bring vengeance on his enemies. To bring vindication for the martyrs. To bring wrath against the persecutors. Okay. In Revelation chapter 6, again, keep in mind, Revelation 6, 12 to 17 is the answer to the prayer of the martyrs who said, how long, O Lord, holy and true, do you not avenge us on those who dwell on the earth? Now, do you take note of the fact that this vengeance that was to be poured out against the persecutors, that vengeance was to take place on the earth? More accurately, on the land. See, they're not concerned with, they certainly don't mention, now just because they don't mention it doesn't mean that there are not implications for this, but they're concerned that vengeance be poured out on their persecutors who are on the earth. So, the answer to their prayer. Now remember, they're told, they were given white robes, told to rest for a little while. Now look, what does a little while mean? I know that people say, well, God doesn't see time like we do. Well, if God doesn't see time like we do, how could God know, the day and the hour of the Lord's coming? If God doesn't see time, set time, and communicate in time like man does, then how could he set the time, appoint the day of the Lord's coming and the judgment? And if the Lord doesn't see time and communicate in time, like you and I would understand and comprehend, then how is it that in Revelation 1, 1 to 3, it says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God, that's the Father, gave to him to show to his servants things which must shortly come to pass. So now look, if God doesn't see time, now, but remember, this is the Father who knew the day and the hour of Jesus' parousia, according to Jesus in Matthew 24:36. But if God doesn't know time and communicate in time, then how could the Father be telling Jesus to tell the churches, these things must shortly come to pass? The time has drawn near. If God doesn't know time, understand time, communicate in time in ways that are objective, in ways that are true, in ways that are understandable, then Revelation 1, 1 to 3 is just a bunch of gobbledygook. That means we have God the Father who does not understand time. And by the way, what kind of nonsense? I'm sorry, I just have to speak plainly here. What kind of nonsense is it to say that God doesn't understand time well enough to communicate truthfully about time? It's frustrating. It's frustrating at times to get people to look past their own prejudices, to get people to look past their own traditions, and to look at what the Bible actually says. So, if God doesn't understand time like we do, why did He speak in time and about time, concerning time, and use words that to mankind mean something objective, mean something concrete? Did God not know that the words He used for at hand, quickly, shortly, soon, a little while, did God not know how man would understand those things? To say that God knew that the words He used, these things must shortly come to pass, would be understood by man in objective, concrete, not subjective, not plastic, silly putty, elastic plastic senses. But if God knew that the words that He used would be understood by men to indicate objective eminence, but He really didn't intend to convey objective eminence, then God was lying. He was purposely deceiving man. Or He just didn't know how to tell the truth about time. Do we really want to go down that road? You know that's not true. You know that's not valid. You know that's not a good argument. So, here we have the martyrs under the altar 2,000 years ago crying out for vindication. They were given white robes and told to rest for a little while. Now, I want to take a brief digression, but it's not really a digression here. The martyrs were told to rest for a little while until the number of their brethren who should be slain as they were should be fulfilled. Now listen to me. I want you to listen. I'm going to tell you something you probably have not heard. But I did an entire DVD series on this issue, or I should say I did an entire DVD on this subject. I am absolutely convinced that the book of Revelation was written before the book of 1 Peter. Now, 1 Peter is generally dated from somewhere between 63 to 65 AD. Now, why do I say that Revelation was written before 1 Peter? Well, there are many reasons for that. And in this series that I did, and it's on 1 Peter, it's listed on my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. And if you go there and you order that DVD series, you can even purchase it, by the way, via download for a greatly reduced price. But nonetheless, if you order that, if you order the actual DVD series, and you mention that you saw this offer on Now TV, I'll pay your shipping. I'll refund your shipping. But anyway, here are two of the reasons why I believe Revelation was written prior to 1 Peter. Number one, in Revelation 3:9 and following, the Lord, speaking to the church at Philadelphia, said, I know your works, and I know your labor, and I know your love. And because you have stood faithful, I will keep you from the hour of tribulation that is about to come on the whole world, on the whole earth. So here is John writing about the great tribulation that was about to take place. And he called it the fiery trial. Okay? So in Revelation, the fiery trial was about to come. Well, in 1 Peter chapter 4, I want you to notice, Peter writing to his audience says, if you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you, for the Spirit of glory and of God rest upon you. On their part he's blasphemed, but on your part he's glorified. Let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God in this matter. For the time has come for the judgment to begin at the house of God. Now, I said all of that for you to notice that Peter is talking about the imminent coming of the judgment. Now, watch this. Verse 12. See, I started later on purpose. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial. Now, some translations, my good old New King James translation says, which is to try you, as if it's future. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that's a horrid translation. It's not even a translation. The actual Greek, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is among you. Hello? Is there a difference between it's about to come and it's already in your midst? Well, yeah. That's one of those duh moments, right? So do you catch the power of this? Here is John in Revelation. Here's Jesus in Revelation talking about the fiery trial that is about to come. Here is Peter saying, brethren, don't think it strange concerning the fiery trial that is in your midst. Now, why would Peter say, don't think it's strange concerning this? It's because they had been warned about it. Where had they been warned about it? Oh, in the book of Revelation. You do realize, don't you, that Revelation and 1 Peter are written to the same audience? Yeah. They're churches of Asia. Yeah. So we have John and Peter talking to the same audiences. John is predicting something that's about to come. Peter is talking about that very subject and says it was there. Now, who do you suppose wrote first? John is a prophecy. Peter is a fact. Who wrote first? Okay, then remember that in Revelation chapter 6, and I apologize if this is too much of a digression, but it's an important digression. Okay? So we have in Revelation chapter 6, the martyrs crying out for vindication, saying, how long, O Lord, holy and true, do you not avenge us on those who dwell on the earth? And they were given white robes and told to rest a little while, until their fellow brethren and the saints who should be slain as they were, should be filled up. Now watch this over in 1 Peter chapter 1. I'm going to begin reading with verse 3 so that we get the entire context. Blessed be the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again unto a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, which does not fade away, which is reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith for the salvation which is ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice. Now watch this. Though need be, for a little while, you are grieved by various trials. Now that word trial is pyrosmos in the Greek. And it's not, how do I express this? It's not being sick. Doesn't have anything to do with COVID. Doesn't have anything to do with, well, I've hit on hard times here. Doesn't even have anything to do with having teenage kids. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. No, it's persecution, which they were enduring at that very trial. So what do we have here? John is talking about the martyrs who have already been slain, okay? And he's talking about their desire for vindication. And that vindication will come in a little while when the number of their fellow brethren who had to be slain would be filled up. And in 1 Peter, Peter is writing to the same audience, same people, and says they were at that very time enduring trials of persecution, which, by the way, meant that they were probably going to die. And then we turn over to 1 Peter chapter 9. Now remember, they're suffering. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 9, Peter, speaking to that audience who had to beware because the devil had been loosed. Hey, that's the end of the millennium situation. Can't talk about that right now. But Peter says, whom resist, that's the devil, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings, that is, the same suffering that they were enduring, are being experienced by your brethren in the world. Now, this word experienced is a really, really fascinating word. It's epiteleo. You know what that means? To fill up. To bring to completion. Wait, what were the martyrs in Revelation chapter 6 told? Rest for a little while until the number of your fellow believers which will be slain as they were, should be filled up. In a little while. And now in Peter is talking to the same audience, and he says they only have to suffer for a little while longer before, guess what? Before their salvation at the day of the Lord. And when would that be? When their suffering, which was the same suffering being experienced by their brethren in the world, would be filled up. Hey, look, folks, I'm sorry, these are exactly identical. But in Revelation chapter 6, it was about to take place. In 1 Peter, it was taking place. And that means Revelation was written before 1 Peter. Now, did you notice that in Peter, just like in Revelation chapter 6, we have the promise of the day of the Lord for the vindication of those martyrs? Revelation chapter 6, 12 and following. And in 1 Peter, what does Peter tell us? What did Peter promise them? You are kept by the power of God through faith for the salvation which is ready. Now this is the Greek word hitoimos, which means it's on the point of. It's coming soon. For the salvation which is ready to be revealed, that's the Greek word apocalypsis. The veil will be torn back, you'll see. You'll realize. In the last time. Now, in 1 Peter chapter 1, 19 and 20, it says they were living in the last time. Then he says, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, once again, a little while, if need be you are grieved by various trials, in order that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation, once again, Greek word, apocalypsis, of Jesus Christ. Revelation 6, their vindication would come in just a little while at the day of the Lord, when the number of martyrs was filled up in a little while. In 1 Peter, we have those suffering martyrdom, Same audience as Revelation. They are promised that they only have to suffer for a little while, because their salvation was ready to be revealed, but they had to be tried. That fiery trial to purge away the dross and to leave their faith pure and holy and precious. Now, keep in mind, folks, this concept is the time of the vindication of the martyrs spoken of by Isaiah. Remember? At the day of the Lord, the blood guilt of Jerusalem would be purged by the spirit of fire and the spirit of judgment. Now remember, folks, this day of the Lord of Isaiah is the day of the Lord of 2 Peter chapter 3. Do you suppose that 2 Peter 3 is talking about a different day of the Lord for salvation? Different from the day of the Lord of 1 Peter that was coming in a little while after they had suffered for only a little while? But their salvation at the day of the Lord was ready to be revealed? Is that a different day of the Lord? If it is, somebody's got to prove it. And so once again, we have this promise of the day of the Lord in Revelation chapter 6. It is the day of the Lord of Isaiah because Revelation 6:12 verse 11 quotes verbatim from Isaiah chapter 2, verse 19 to 21. That day of the Lord is when men could run to the mountains, hide in the caves, cry to the rocks, fall on us, which Jesus applied to AD 70, which Paul applied to AD 70. Now remember, folks, once again, this is what's so critical. 2 Peter 3 is that day of the Lord of Isaiah. That day of the Lord of Isaiah is the day of the Lord of Luke, Matthew 23, 2 Thessalonians 1, Revelation chapter 6. I'm out of time again. I've got more, so I'll see you next week.